in terms of pretty much everything, from suspension travel to frame features to spec, even the marketing placement of this bike. Trek's Top Fuel is probably one of the most confusing bikes I've ever ridden. But the most important thing is, it's almost certainly one of the best non-stop anywhere speed machines I've ever tested. It really is that good. So, what's so confusing? And what do you need to know about it? It's time to go truly non-stop on Trek's lightweight Have a Go Hero all-rounder.
My name's Guy Kestevan. I've been a professional bike and kit tester for 25 years. And to be honest, this video went a bit sideways. I'd had the bike for ages. I was still trying to completely pin down my thoughts on it because it is kind of a confusing mix of different aspects. But then Trek needed the bike back in a hurry, so I had to make a video. So I went up to Stainburn. I thought, I still haven't really got an idea. I'll just start riding and talking. And then as I was riding and talking, the fact I could keep riding and keep talking all the time kind of made sense for the bike, because as you'll see from the video. But that means I ended up with a 40-minute long continuous stream of consciousness bike test shot. So, and this is the shorter 28-minute edited version of that, which has a bit less heavy breathing, but also a bit less about kind of shopping decisions and sizing on the bike and the range overall, and a few less bloopers. So if you want the full mashings, go click on that link here or here. I don't know where it'll end up. I've lost track, to be honest. But otherwise, pick your poison and hope you enjoy a slightly different approach, which in the end sums up this potentially confusing but ultimately brilliant bike rather well.
And the confusion starts with where Trek position the bike in their range and the name of it, because Top Fuel has always traditionally been Trek's fastest full suspension XC race bike, because, you know, Top Fuel as in dragsters which can run any fuel they want. But they kind of moved in a more trail direction with the last bike, and then this one has gone even further towards trail. So head tube angle, it's now 1.5 degrees slacker. You've got 5mm more travel, and you've even got an ISCG mount. Well, you've got most of an ISCG mount. You've got 2 chain guard mounts, not 3. And that kind of exemplifies the confusion there is with this bike, because it is still relatively light. They're claiming 2.7 kilos for the chassis, and given that this medium bike weighs 12.9 without pedals, despite the fact wheels that are very heavy for carbon at around 2 kilos, and you've got a SID fork on this version as well, which again, even this 120mm guys is definitely a racer's fork rather than a trail fork in theory. But in contrast to the wheels that you'd think are going to be super light because they're carbon, which aren't, these chunky looking 2.4 inch Bontrager XR4 tyres, they're actually surprisingly quick rolling. So even the wheels are a contradiction. And then the suspension. Trek have now gone back to RockShox Deluxe Ultimate spec rather than their own reactive tune, which was always marketed as being very efficient pedalling, quite a firm feel off the top. Originally dated from some collab work they did with Penske, the IndyCar racing suspensions people. But ironically, now this back end, if anything, feels even more tight and controlled off the top than it did on the reactive shocks. But when I got talking to Jason, the Trek suspension engineer who's the lead on this project, it's actually less of a surprise they feel similar, because while it's got a very medium linear rebound tube, there's actually a custom Trek digressive compression tune in this shock, which kind of mimics what they did with reactive, and it's only possible with the bits that you have as options on the Ultimate shock, which is why all the bikes get that top spec shock. But otherwise it is just a progressive air can with 0 tokens in negative or positive, so you can do a lot of your own tuning in there still if you want to. But having ridden this bike a lot, I don't know why you want to, because basically it's just an awesome all-rounder if you like to keep the hammer down on climbs, as well as your heels down on descents, and just charge everything as flat out as possible. So let's dig into that a bit more. I mean, for a start, the fact I've just climbed up, I mean, I've not been flat out by any stretch, but a relatively techie, nadgery climb while chatting to the camera without any issues shows you that it's still a very efficient climber. The fact that when it does stall out there, the pickup from that rear hub, the instant drive 108 as they call it, is genuinely instant. So there's no lag. And also that new suspension kinematic is very, very consistent throughout its stroke in terms of anti-squat. So it only ranges from 102 to just above 100% throughout the stroke. So wherever you are in the travel, you can rely on that back wheel to bite and drive and grip in a really consistent way. So again, still chatting after another techie climbing challenge and chucking those tyres, and it rolls really, really easily. Plus, even things like the fact there's room for a full-size bottle and plenty of storage now under that frame hatch means you've got, you know, reasonable range. I mean, it's not a double bottle bike, and I'm not for a minute suggesting this is a pure XC racer, even if Trek categorise it as such, because it's not a 2 kilogram frame. And they're going to be going, why the hell has it got 2 chainring tabs on it? That's not what you're going to turn up on a World Cup start line on. So that's why they've got the super caliber, that weird, but obviously specialised inspiring ISO strut bike with 60mm of travel for emergency use. But I've ridden this with much lighter wheels and it's not hard at all. I mean, Bontrager themselves do a 1200 gram XXX light set now, so you can save 800 grams out the wheel set alone, and then you could just put lighter tyres on. To be honest, I wouldn't follow Bontrager there because, spoiler alert, their XR2s are pretty wretched, nowhere near as fast as they look, but you could easily save probably another 300 grams front and rear on tyres. So what have you got there? Well, easily a kilo, and you got an 11.9 kilo bike, which for marathon use, happy days. But then you'd be missing out on the fact that that 66-degree head angle is teamed with a 10 mil more reach across all sizes compared to the last bike. So this medium 455 in the low setting on that magnesium linkage chip. But most importantly, once you get past that initial crispness that lets you sprint when you need it to, woohoo! This bike pops, controls and sends rocky stuff and random geology brilliantly. And while that sounded pretty spectacular off the front tyre, luckily it wasn't a Bernard Kerr hardline moment, so we're all good, because you have got plenty of volume in that tyre. And when you lean it over, it might be more drifty than you expect, but it's a very consistent drift, which again just kind of plays into that whole, well, player vitality of this bike. And I think that's got to be the longest continuous discussion of a bike I've ever recorded, certainly on a majority climbing section. But things like, again, the seat angle isn't super steep, but 76 is good enough to sit in this Arvada saddle, and as long as you spin, it's actually pretty stable. Plus you've got that little 3-position gate at the top that lets you dial in your low speed compression. And then now that knock block steering lock has been moved out to 72 degrees, little sections like that tight turn in between two logs, not a drama. Let's go back onto the chest cam and think about what we haven't said about this bike. And mostly, I think the lesson here is, because it's taken me a long time to get round to strapping this camera on and actually recording this review, because there are so many seeming contradictions to come to terms with. But what really matters is that that actually doesn't matter. I mean, my mate Simon out in Spain, his lad, apparently said he wanted a down country bike, and Simon had no idea what that was. And so I said, well, basically it's a bike that lets you climb like your life depended on it, but then descends like you don't care about living at all. And that's exactly the bracket that this top fuel sits into. It's just up for anything. in a surprisingly capable yet really agile and rewardingly responsive way. Everything from that kind of gimbal style rear suspension, because again that Trek signature ABP rear pivot, active braking pivot, means that you can haul on the anchors without the bike squatting down or jacking up, obviously. So you got really consistent feel through those XT levers. And then they've actually taken maximum advantage of that by fitting a really small 160mm rear rotor, because the traction is good. You don't need that extra anchorage, and it's pretty much the same with every aspect of the bike. So coming up to here, trailer's smooth, very little movement from the back end. Feels like I've got it locked out, particularly as it comes back to sag point. It sits back down very firmly. So you've got that real race bike efficiency vibe. Even when you slow down, it sinks a bit in the travel. The bike feels on top of its power stroke, encouraging you to keep the power down. But then when it has to track across routes, does it without any kind of complaint. There's a bit of seat bounce, tiny bit of stand up, but considering how long I've now been talking continuously, this bike is making very short work of one of the steeper climbs here at Stainburn. And that handling now, really well balanced for purpose. Just steep enough that it's quick and agile on the climbs. All models get a 435mm chainstay as well, so kind of average length for a 29er with this much travel, and you don't get different rear end lengths for different sizes, so it's likely to feel slightly disproportionate in XL. But on the smallest size, you do get a 27.5-inch mullet rear wheel, which helps with the proportions there. And pretty much unique to Trek. I think Giant tried it for a bit as well, but I haven't checked whether they still do. You've got that medium large size. I'm actually riding a medium today, so it's a little cramped compared to what I'd normally be on, but that medium large just between the sizes fits me like a glove. Come on, let's do a bit of techie rocky climby stuff, and then let's open the throttle on the descent again if we're going to keep going, because I hadn't planned this at all. But actually doing this as a continuous take might be kind of a win in terms of describing just how permanently on it this bike is. This is actually the 22 model. 23 bikes will come with 130mm pike, so you're going to get slightly more capability in the fork, slightly slacker head angle, a little bit more ground clearance, but obviously that's going to add some weight as well. Just the big win here is that even though this bike is a lot cheaper than the Yeti and the Santa Cruz I tested recently, it's actually a couple of 100 grams lighter, and crucially it's a hell of a lot cheaper with full XT, and it is full XT. There's no weird tricks here, there's no SLX or Dior chain, it's all proper, super durable, because I'm worth it the long distance L'Oreal Shimano Dior XT. And to be honest, I've forgotten how good that feels. The functionality of the XT definitely makes it a very cost-effective choice, because you're still getting all those really nice longevity touches with little things that you'd never normally think about, like boron pins in the rear mech, upgraded jockey wheel bearings, and proper geeky boring stuff, but stuff that you'll really appreciate when you're 100 or so miles in. And you'll also appreciate this bike is efficient enough that you can do those 100 miles in one fell swoop if you wanted. Because the more I ride it, the more it kind of shows that it doesn't have to be super light, and it doesn't even need super light race wheels to feel responsive and agile. And also with that SID-in and with a low stack height, it's got a nice aggressive hunter vibe to the front end. You probably can't really see it, but I'm really hunkered over into turns, really driving that SID hard naturally. So the balance of the bike is all about speed rather than kind of sit up and beg steez. And again, it's just another little secret tweak that adds more velocity and more dragster effect to this top fuel. And even though this is a £6 bike, you still get carbon bars as well, and you get the tie rail saddle. So the only real spec issue, I reckon, is the fact that that kinked seat tube only comes in a 150mm reach on this medium. It goes up to 170 on larger sizes, but you know, that's the you know what I should do, don't you? And I can't think where else I'd go after hunting him down, so I'm going to peel, folks. It'd be fun, but the footage wouldn't be that great. So what haven't we shown you? I guess we haven't shown you Blackrock, which, if anything, is where this SID-equipped bike will presumably start to hit its limits. And just as a filler before things get spicy, like I say, this is a really good cost-effective spec as far as I'm concerned, because while those wheels are heavy, you do get that 2-year warranty with them, which is a definite help for peace of mind on the jankier sections of staying burn. But because you do get what they call inner strength sidewalls on these XR4 tyres, but from experience they're not the toughest set of rubber. But then you can actually hear them, if you listen carefully, peeling and flicking a bit as they catch the edges of the rocks. But in terms of the fork, still no spiking. Frames, oh, there's a bang. The frame is still definitely taut enough to steer accurately. No problem with the SID either. And then that instant squeeze of power means that little rise up, takey climbs like that, no drama whatsoever. And so it's just a case of relaxing your hands, because you know, 120mm travel isn't a huge amount, and just glance at the red ring there, and I have used it all. But in terms of being able to place, I might not, hope I don't regret saying this, but in terms of being able to place the front wheel with consistent accuracy, this top fuel It's an excellent chassis without it being so abusive. It batters the speed and the subtlety out of you. If you still haven't found the ideal top fuel view, all Treks come with a Project One option, so you can switch around spec and even choose custom paint options on the bike of your choice. But don't think, I know on the Fuel EX 9.9 I reviewed, I said it was cheaper to buy the frame set and then build it up. Pretty sure that's not the case here, because a top fuel frame set in carbon is nearly £5 grand. So complete bikes, not chassis, but otherwise pick the right bike and you're definitely on for a bargain, because this certainly competes with the real premium bikes I've been running around Stainburn recently. And if I had to pick one, even if it was a cost no object, just in terms of proven technology and that combination of power but plushness and traction, I think it'd be the Trek that I'd tuck under my arm and stop answering calls to send it back for. So, on that bombshell, as Jeremy Clarkson would say, thanks massively to Trek for sending me the bike and supporting the video. I think you know I speak the truth whenever the GoPro goes on. However, I'm justifying spending the time doing it. Thanks to Zero Cycling, Petey's products, Torque, Nutrition, Crud XL fenders on the front there, Enduro bearings, my latest sponsors, and Hebtroco, everybody's favourite hipster clothing brand from Todmorden. And of course, my awesome Patreon subscribers who pledge every month to support the channel, and they get early, exclusive and extended mixes of my videos, plus more access to my mountain bike memory banks. And I think they'll be getting a full cut video of this first. Hope you've enjoyed watching something a bit different. A no dab, non-stop talk around on Treks. Absolutely remarkable, initially very confusing, but ultimately very convincing entry to the short travel trail, down country, go hard, whatever the mission machine. The Trek Top Fuel 9.8 XT. And this is where I find out that camera was pointing lower than normal, so I'm just hoping it's not all stem and shorts and no single track. But look, I'm not confused. I'm wearing a trail helmet with goggles, but because I didn't stop, the goggles haven't shifted. It really is quite some bike, this. Genuinely sad to see it go.